The Travel Transformation Podcast is proud to be partnered with Give the Goodness Global, an amazing global outreach project helping families in need all over Southeast Asia and beyond. Please check them out at Instagram.com/Give the Goodness Global today. And now on to the podcast episode.
Welcome to the Travel Transformation Podcast, the podcast that explores the life-changing potential of solo travel, intentional travel, and location-independent working. Whether you're an aspiring digital nomad or simply want to boost your confidence through epic travel experiences, I'm here to motivate and inspire you to go after all your wildest dreams. I'm Jessica Grace Coleman, author, travel transformation coach, founder of Flip the Script Travel Transformation Services, and your host for the Travel Transformation Podcast. Travel changed my life. Now let's change yours. You ready? Let's go. Welcome to the Travel Transformation Podcast, the podcast where we talk all things travel and all things transformation. I'm your host, Jessica Grace Coleman, and today I have a special guest, Sarah Hughes, who I met when traveling last year. Sarah is an award-winning marketer who specializes in B2B marketing and generating leads on LinkedIn. She set her first company up in 2002, but she was always entrepreneurial, having started her first business at the age of 12. Now she works with a range of businesses from global brands through to sole traders. Defining element, they market to other businesses and are lovely to work with. She is originally from Birmingham in the UK and is thankful to the TV series Peaky Blinders for making the Brummie accent trendy. She now lives in the wonderful and quirky town of Totnes, Devon. A nature lover and personal growth junkie, she is into the outdoors, having fun, and making things. She's also an Earl Grey tea and apple crumble aficionado and occasional digital nomad. And she is a believer in living your best life at every age. As I said, I met her last year and I've met up with her since at her lovely home in Devon. And we had great fun with this interview, so let's get straight to it. Hi, Sarah. Thank you for coming on the podcast. How are you?
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely. I've been looking forward to it, Jess, immensely. And I think I'm in a great place in life. And someone that I do coaching with, his phrase is, he's beyond awesome. And I think I'm going to use his phrase for myself today too.
Nice. Yes, definitely. It's nice to see your face as well. I haven't seen you for a while.
And you. I know it's too long.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so before we get into everything, could you please just give our listeners a little bit of background info on you, what you do, where you're from originally, and where you are now?
Well, soon to be 54-year-old woman, and the common parlance is queenager, fantastic woman in her 50s. Although I do admit to often feeling ageless, which serves me very well in life. I started my own first official business up 21 years ago. And that business is business to business marketing. So it works with companies and individuals want to market to other businesses and for those other businesses to be equipped to buy from them.
Nice.
And then in terms of where I'm from, obviously you can probably detect some Midlands twang. And so originally from Birmingham, home of the Black Country, home of Peaky Blinders, close to the Black Country. And I thank the Peaky Blinders for allowing the Brummie accent to trend. I never thought I would see the day. But I now live in the glorious, quirky town of Totnes in Devon in the southwest of England.
Which is a very nice place, I have to say.
It is. You've been now, so you know.
Yes, I have. So yeah, maybe we should tell the listeners how we met then, so everyone has a bit of context. We met last year in a co-living in Spain called Sun & Co. And mainly what I remember from our first meeting is that it was...
Good. Tell me. You've never shared this with me before.
Well, no, this is what I remember from the whole day, because it was our friend Irene's birthday the next day and we were going out.
Now I remember.
I try not to go out till like 5 a.m. all the time when I'm in co-livings because I get such bad hangovers and I can't do anything the next day. But it was a friend's birthday. And I think that was your first night, if I remember.
I arrived from another island. I arrived after 11 hours of travel at 7 p.m. and we were going out for Irene's birthday at something like 7:20 p.m.
Yes, I remember this. And Irene, bless her, stayed behind until you were ready. And then
Oh,
you came
such
and
a
met us.
kind person.
Yeah. And then that started a night of drinking. Yeah, I remember. I think I stayed out till like 5 a.m. or something. And then the next day, anticipated, I had an awful hangover. And when you're in co-living, it's quite a lot of the people are quite young. So there's quite a lot of 20-year-olds and stuff. And everyone else seemed completely fine. And I was like dying. And I remember sitting outside in like the little courtyard bit.
Yeah.
And then you appeared in the door and you looked like how I felt. And I was like, thank God there's someone else who's feeling the same as me. I think we bonded over that.
No, I think I probably looked like you felt, even worse than I looked, because I had not been that wrecked since I was at university, and it was 1989.
Wow.
That was the last time I'd been that wrecked.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, you did very well because you were functioning better than I was that day. But anyway, so that's when we met.
Yes.
And then you organized a day trip to a lovely place called Altea. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Yeah, that's right.
4 of us went, and it was a really nice day. And I remember on that day you telling me about the story that I'm going to ask you about in a bit of how you moved to Devon.
Yeah.
And you made Devon sound so wonderful and lovely that on that day, even though we'd sort of just met, me, our friends Deanna and Sunny decided we were all going to descend on Devon that summer. So we
Yeah.
decided to come and see you for a week. And then, yeah, we came to Devon, Totnes for a week, stayed in your place, did the whole digital nomad thing, working, and we did loads of fun activities that you set up for us. And yeah, it was just really nice. So that's how we know each other. And also when we were in Sun and Co, I remember you said you just come from a different island, and I think you did quite a few co-livings in like a short space of time. Is that right?
Yeah, I decided to do an experiment for 3 months because I wanted to really get a sense of the digital nomad lifestyle, and I wanted to experience lots of different co-live, co-work spaces. And the best way of doing that is to go to as many as I can. So I had been to quite a lot in a shorter space of time. And I have got learnings from that in terms of I would and wouldn't differently. So yeah, been and done a lot in a short space of time, and was just very energized by the whole experience.
I remember you saying that you liked certain things about certain co-livings and other things were a bit harder. For someone who's never been to a co-living and doesn't know what to expect, can you maybe go into like the sort of pros and cons of the places you went to, or some things you didn't like and some things
Yeah,
that
of
you thought were
course.
done well?
The reason that I decided to go the co-live, co-work route, because obviously for anyone considering travel, they've got a number of accommodation options. A lot of people go Airbnb route. So they'll get to a city and they'll think, right, let's just get an Airbnb because then you're a bit more self-contained, aren't you? And because of where I live, so I live in this, which is where we're recording this from, and you've now stayed at. I live in a beautiful apartment that has panoramic views and overlooks, in the sweep of a view, overlooks Totnes Castle, the tours on Dartmoor, the Elizabethan High Street, the river, and then meadows that comprise my panoramic view in Totnes. So I live in a really lovely apartment that's in a converted Victorian villa. And I love my apartment. It's really light, bright, obviously adored year round with my own handmade bunting. I need to get that in there. And so I have no complaints about where I live remotely. But bearing in mind, like last year, we'd not long come out of COVID. And because I'd at that point been single for like ever and being self-employed, running my own business, I was just so lonely because we'd all had like isolation in one way or another. And it was the spring of last year. So yeah, a year ago, just over. And I just felt in a real rut. I felt I was really struggling to get up. I felt tired a lot, even though I slept a lot. And you know, when you feel like, got the emoji, haven't you? Meh. It was just like, I thought, what the hell is wrong with me? In many respects, I've got a bloody amazing life, but I don't feel connected. And for me, I'm quite a sociable person. And I'm not a total extrovert, although people think I'm not, but I'm still more on the extroversion scale. And I just thought I need to be with other people in a more meaningful way. And I was finding that in my life in Devon, particularly, I wasn't meeting and interacting with a lot of younger people. And I think it's so important to have a generational mix in your friendship circle or your interactions. And so that's why I thought I need some adventure. I want to meet much younger people because there's a different energy and dynamism, and I can learn loads from younger people. And I love travel. I love adventure. And so that was my starting point for doing the digital nomad experiment.
Yeah, and I completely relate with that, with the whole like
Well,
living on
you'd
your
had it
own.
with your back and being stuck in for, was it a year?
On and off, because I kept triggering it again. About a year, and it was still bad when the first lockdown happened. A year before that, I was kind of in my own kind of lockdown, on and off. But yeah, living on my own, working on my own, don't really see anyone. Even pre-pandemic, this was, and then obviously the pandemic, all the lockdowns made it a lot worse. And it sounds crazy, but one of the things that sort of triggered me booking Sun & Co, same company, the first time I went to their pop-up. It was actually watching like a really rubbish reality TV show where
Not Married at First Sight.
No.
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 This is the confessional now. You realise that?
It was on Netflix.
Yeah.
It's called 20 somethings Austin, I think. And I really want to go to Austin, Texas. So I'll watch this. And it was basically like they had a house for guys and a house for girls. And it was basically, I think they're all in like, they are in their 20s because it's called 20 somethings Austin. I was about to say something really stupid then. And yeah, it was about them sort of moving there from all over the States and trying to make it, basically trying to get a job, make friends, all that kind of stuff. And most of it was really stupid, hooking up stories, fighting with your roommates and that kind of stuff. But a lot of it was all some real proper friendships came out of it, and some of them moved in together afterwards. And it was just watching that, like something that like means absolutely nothing to most people, but being on your own the whole time, it just like made me crave like connection and community and just living with other people for a bit. Like it doesn't have to be forever, just like getting out there and trying something completely different. And that's actually one of the reasons I went online and finally booked a co-living, even though I'd been on that email list for years and never got around to doing it. So yeah, just something stupid like that.
I think everyone needs a tipping point. Yeah. Everyone, there's something, because my tipping point was I felt in a rut, even though in a way I had no right to feel in a rut, but what you feel in it. And I heard it being described by someone as a rut being a coffin with the ends taken off.
Oh, wow.
Which was a really powerful metaphor. And then I saw a guy called John Williams. He's immense. I do recommend following him, and we can put a link to his profile on his Facebook and page and everything afterwards. But he's a business author, and he's written quite a few books that have been in the bestseller list. And we've been following each other for quite some time. And I saw him do a live stream from Madeira about Madeira having the first digital nomad village in the world. And he was doing this live stream from Madeira. And that was my tipping point that night, the way that yours was watching that TV series. I just thought, right, okay, well, I've got a focus. It's going to be easier if they've got that whole economy's geared to digital nomads and they've got a village. That's my focus. That night, I booked my one-way ticket to Madeira, my 2 or 3 nights in a hotel, so at least I had somewhere to go. And that was all that I got booked. And that was the start of the adventure.
Wow, that's so cool. That's amazing. So in all the places you've stayed, have there been certain things you've liked, certain things that you found challenging? Like, what are the pros and cons, would you say?
I stayed in, let me think, in Madeira, it was very difficult to find good co-living space. So the government's still got a long way to go, in my view. It set itself up as this economy, and it set up the digital nomad village, but it doesn't offer you any accommodation in the village. There's like a free co-work resource. So I loved Madeira. I'm really glad I went. I met some amazing people, but I didn't find it actually that easy to find the co-live experience. I really struggled with that. There are some co-lives there, but one was full, and it's in a tiny little village, but it's like almost like a fishing village. I couldn't find anything in Funchal. which you would think would be, because it's the capital of Madeira, the obvious place. So I actually really struggled with the Madeira bit of the digital nomad, which is quite ironic, isn't it? Given what the positioning of it is. I then went to a digital nomad experience that was a 5-day experience on an island called Porto Santo, which is near to Madeira. That was pretty dismal.
Yeah.
The island is amazing, but it was very poorly organised. And the woman running it as the manager was a lovely woman, but was lacked organisational skills. So about 80% of what was meant to be the programme that we were offered, because we obviously paid for our accommodation, paid for getting there. What was free was like the co-work space, which was pretty abysmal. It was like a sort of bad 1950s office that for anyone in the UK, even David Brent wouldn't want to walk into. So that was pretty abysmal. The island itself was stunning. And I met a couple of people there that it was great to meet them. And then after that, I went to Gran Canaria and stayed in a place called the Mansion in Las Palmas. Again, had its challenges. It wasn't a great community space that I was staying in, but I did meet some great people as part of it, because it was a weird sort of house in that there were all these different rooms, but there wasn't, like in Sun & Co, which was my favourite co-work space. There was always, the minute you walked into the open plan kitchen living room, and it was the heart, wasn't it? It was the hub of the whole place. And the place that I stayed in Gran Canaria, the one that had a really good reputation, which was run by the same company as the mansion that I was in, it was called The Roof, and everyone wanted to get in there. And if I went back to Las Palmas, I would try and get in at The Roof. I think that slept up to 20, but it really had the right social space, because it's not just big sprawling spaces that you want. You want places that it's not all about the number of rooms. It's about what's the social space and what's the community of it like. I then went to, I'm trying to think, then Tenerife after that, and stayed in a couple of different co-lives there. And I won't say the name of it because I don't think it's fair. There was a co-live in Tenerife, North Tenerife, that had amazing reviews. And it was the one that I'd booked the longest to stay in. And I'd been really excited about getting in. And because it's got a waiting list usually. It was really strange because when I did get there, for me, it was a really weird vibe, that it felt like it was just hard to get any traction, that it was the biggest co-live that I went to. So co-live, co-work. The person that owns it is a lovely person, really liked her. And the staff were great, but it was this weird atmosphere that, you know, you'd have an in-depth conversation with someone one night and they'd just blank you in the corridor the next day. Or I remember like one of the community hosts who's also doing yoga for them. Bearing in mind, you know, what was great at Sun & Co was with John, you know, that whole thing about how we met was when I just arrived, you know, found out about the party and said, right, I didn't even pack, did I? All I did was go to the loo, basically,
yeah,
and brush my teeth. But what was really special for me, and it started the whole journey for me at Sun & Co, was Irene, even though it was her birthday party, waiting for me, because that never would have happened at this other co-live. You'd have just been left out on a limb.
Yeah.
And that was the game changer. The minute I got to Sun & Co, from all the other places that I'd been, I just felt I was part of something, and that other people were looking out for me, even though I was a total stranger and I didn't know anyone. That was the game changer for me. So Sun & Co was fabulous. The only thing that I would have liked at Sun & Co that it didn't have, actually, there were two things, one of which I know is remedied now, is that so Sun & Co has got co-worky type rooms as part of the accommodation, but it's also got a separate co-work space. And it was a real nightmare trying to do Zooms but they've now got little hubs, I think, little acoustic pods.
In the co-work space, yeah.
So that solves that problem. But I remember trying to do Zooms, and there were in particular a couple of people that were in our co-live that really, I don't think, were overly tolerant of it not being absolutely perfect.
Right.
So even though I was trying to speak really quietly on the Zoom, you could just tell. And even though it wasn't an office that I was in, so that didn't make it easy, but that's solved now. And the only other thing that would have made Sun & Co better, because I loved it, was I found that because there wasn't any quiet space, like quiet green space, we had the courtyard, which was fine, but it wasn't green and it wasn't quiet or it wasn't shaded. For me, would have been, which I did appreciate at other co-lives that I was in, was just some kind of quiet, outdoor, nature-based space would have made a huge difference to me. But everything else about it, I absolutely adored, and I think they've got it really right.
Totally agree. And yeah, I think when you're living with that many people and there are always people around, you do need that space outside that's a bit quieter, that's green, that's you can go and just breathe for a bit, especially if you're sharing a room like we did. Would be good to have somewhere like that to go to. But I totally agree. They've completely nailed the whole co-living ethos, like all their core values, the whole thing about community and giving more than you take, and like sharing your skills and like helping each other out with like personal stuff and professional stuff. And they're really well organized, aren't they? Like they have family meetings every week, they organize all the events, and yeah, it's just a really great company. So totally agree with you on that.
Absolutely. And I think that it's interesting because we appreciated how organized they were. I wonder if you were an absolutely spontaneous person. I mean, I'm quite spontaneous, but you know, if you got someone that was very like uber spontaneous, I wonder if they'd have felt a bit constrained by it. I don't know. But then you just choose what you don't have to go to any of the co-live meetings. You just choose, you take what you want from it, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. And I do like how they have like WhatsApp groups when you're there. So if you are feeling spontaneous and you're like, hey, does anyone want to go for a day trip, or does anyone want to go to a restaurant or something, you can just put it in there and hopefully someone will reply and stuff. So I did like that about it as well.
And that's it, because it was another thing that reminded me, because I think we're going to talk about my little video diary series, aren't we, at some point? But in the other co-living that I said was really strange, there was a trip organised by the co-livers it was supposed to be an easy 2-hour hike. And so we'd got in a car or a couple of cars. It was a 90-minute drive to this easy 2-hour hike. And we would like driving into quite mountainous terrain. And I was like, where's the easy hike going to happen? And so because I'm a fast walker when I'm on the level, but I'm not brilliant on my balance at the moment. So, you know, if you're going over like really quite craggy terrain, I'm not going to be like a mountain goat. And so when we got there and I was like, where are we walking? And they sort of showed me the kind of terrain. And I was just like, my heart sank. And because I didn't want to slow the group down, I said, well, I don't think I'm suitable for the walk or the walk suitable for me. Not a problem, because I didn't want to cause a problem to anyone. You feel shit enough as it is that you're like, oh God. So I said, look, I'm going to try and get down to, there was some towns that we passed en route to the mountain, because I knew that after they'd done that walk that was meant to be 2 hours, they were then going to get back in the cars and go to another nice place nearby. And I was like, oh, brilliant, because I can just get myself down off this mountain bit. Walking, it was all like hairpin bends going up it. But I thought, well, I'll get a buzz down or something. And then if they know that I'm just in effect at the bottom of the mountain range, when they come off their walk, if they could just like drop me a note on WhatsApp and let me know, oh yeah, we're off now, we'll pick you up en route. Because it was a 90-minute car journey and it was a Sunday in a Catholic country that I found out doesn't have barely any transport on a Sunday. So in the end, I managed by hook or by crook to I walked off the mountain and I managed to get different ways of getting to this little Garaccio, it's called, this coastal town. And I messaged them on the group saying, I hope you had a great walk. I'm now in Garaccio. Do you know, no one even checked that I was all right. No one even messaged me. No one said anything. And it was like the next day that I saw someone, the walk organizer, who had messaged, and she didn't say, oh yeah, that walk was a lot more difficult. But no one even, that's what the whole experience was like there. It was weird. And other people had a brilliant time there. Yeah. Because I think the other problem is, I would say about co-live, co-work, is that if you like the owner or if you like some of the hosts, I don't think people are honest often about what they found their experience to be. Because human nature, you like the person that owns it or the community host, so you don't want to leave a less than amazing review, do you?
Yeah, I totally understand that. Like, you can feel bad leaving a bad review about something, even if it was terrible. Like, you just feel, well, what am I doing here? I'm like killing someone's business or, their reputation or something.
Yeah.
So,
and this place had got 5-star reviews, gazillions of 5-star reviews, all the different apps and on Google Maps and everything like that. And when I wrote the review, and I thought, I will write the review, because they keep emailing me to ask me to write a review.
So I will write the review.
So I thought in the end, actually, I will write the review. I think I gave them 3 out of 5. And I did say in the review, if it was for the intention of the owner and the community managers and the organisation and the cleanliness of the place, it would get a 5. In terms of my own happiness, I couldn't wait to leave.
Yeah,
I'd give it a 2. And it's something that you can set the right environment for a co-live, co-work. But you can't make it, you can't guarantee it, because it's all dependent on the people that are there at the time.
That's it as well. If it's the people that make a place, then those 5-star reviews, or some of them could have been because they were there with amazing people and it just happened to be that timing worked out. And then other times, but like you say, if just a weird energy and a weird atmosphere, there's obviously something else going on as well. And
I did really examine my own behaviour, my own approach. Thought, is it something that I'm doing? But genuinely, hand in heart, really, well, what I'm like quite a lot now, because we've spent a lot of time together. And I really will put myself out there, and I'm positive and motivated. So I genuinely just think I struck unlucky. Oh, the word of advice that I would give is that I booked for 3 weeks of that co-live. I was really miserable, but I stuck it out there. I would say, if you've been there a week and you're really not enjoying it, speak to the host, because they don't want you to be there and be unhappy.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that they would rather refund you the money so you can go to another co-live, rather than you be unhappy, leave a review that reflects that. So don't do what I did, because I made a mistake at that one.
Sorry for the interruption, but I just have to tell you about Give the Goodness Global, an incredible global outreach project run by American veteran Cody Grannon. Cody is passionate about helping those in need all over the world, whether it's raising money for a specific family he's met while traveling in Southeast Asia, giving food and supplies to people who would otherwise go without, or simply donating his time to help wherever help is needed. Please check out Instagram.com/GiveTheGoodnessGlobal to find out more, to donate money to their current cause, or to buy Give the Goodness Global merch, all the profits of which go straight back to helping those in need. Plus, 10% of all profits from Jessica Grace Coleman's book, Intentional Travel Transformation, are donated to this brilliant cause. You can find out more about this at traveltransformationcoach.com/books. So remember, be kind and give the goodness always. Thank you. And now back to the Travel Transformation Podcast.
Sometimes you feel like you should stick something out, like you feel like you don't want to quit, but I totally agree. And even if you can't get a refund, I would say if you're that miserable somewhere, you've got
anyway.
Just go anyway. Like, it's not worth it if you're really that unhappy.
It's not.
Okay. So you mentioned your YouTube videos before, your Diary of a Midlife digital nomad videos that I saw you record some, and you interviewed me as well when we were in Javier.
Yeah.
So can you tell me
more about? I've still got more to post.
Have you? Oh,
yeah. I've got an interview, and I have to apologise to. I've got still an interview with Yusra, lovely Yusra.
Yeah.
Irene, because I'd promised the formatting, and also a lovely woman that I also met in Gran Canaria. So I've got 3 or 4 more to post.
Okay, so
And
there's more to
I'm
come.
going to post them over May. I'm going to make that commitment.
Nice. So can you tell us what it's about, what kind of videos you do? You mentioned interviews there, but I know you do other ones as well. And what made you want to do it?
I just thought it would be good to record with honesty the experience as it was happening. So because I run a marketing agency, my agency does produce professional videos, but that's because there's a professional videographer there. It goes in for professional post-production. The videos that I did are nothing like that. They're totally amateur. It was just done on my iPhone with my little selfie stick. And the only post-production on it is added captions. And if there was a bit of a lexical filler, just like that, I just removed that. But I didn't do any other edit at all. And I wanted to capture it as it was happening, the highs and the lows of what the experience was like, going to places you'd never been to before, completely by yourself, not even knowing sometimes where you're going to stay the next night, because that's what it was like a lot of the time in Madeira, and how I found the work-life balance and all the facets of doing the co-live, co-work experience. So the first one that I did was when I arrived in Madeira, and I did it that afternoon after I thought I'd got ripped off in a taxi of 60 euros, but it turned out it was a fair enough fare. And the next day, so day 2, was when I'd heard that I'd had some quite upsetting news that a young guy that I used to manage, who had MS, I'd heard that he died. And I'd got a very elderly uncle I'd heard was poorly. And I'd heard that night another family member was really struggling with alcoholism and gone to rehab. So I had those 3 pieces of news in one day. And what do you do with it? You're in a country, you don't know anyone. You don't even know where you're staying the night after that. And you just pitch up at this place that was then the digital Nomad village that had the co-work space. But when I pitched up there, I think it was 4:30, 5 o'clock the first day, there was hardly anyone there and no one spoke to me.
No, it's not a good welcome.
I know. So I just sort of was very honest. And if I was feeling courageous, I'd be courageous. But if I was feeling vulnerable, I'd be vulnerable. And it's showing, and all the facets, like I did one where I think it was called Dirty Little Secrets. It's like, even, well, where do you wash your clothes? What clothes do you take? I tried to travel light and I still took, I think my luggage was 20 kilos.
Yeah, mine's at least 20 every time. Yep.
Yeah. So it's all the facets from the really practical minutiae through to quite existential, what are we all here for thoughts, and everything in between. Like, I wanted to use travel to help me transition to more helpful habits. And I'm sure you cover this in what you do, is like travel's brilliant as a pattern interrupt, that if you are finding you want to start helpful new activities, a great time to do it is when you're traveling.
That's true.
I did a podcast where I was holding up, not podcast, a video diary where I was holding up my sports bra. I don't know if you saw me doing any of my HIIT training in the morning. I started doing HIIT training every morning when I was traveling. So my cue and my habit former was hanging my boulder holder sports bra up next to my bed. So they're everything. The uniting factor in, I think there's something like 40 videos there now, and they range from 2 to 6 minutes. And the uniting factor is no holds barred honesty.
Nice. Yeah, I've watched quite a few and they're really cool.
Oh,
Was it the one where you did you record the bit where you went to a Zumba class and it was just in like a random car park or something, and there were like people eating their dinner, like watching you or something, or the breakfast? That was funny. I like that.
Oh yeah, I managed because of Trezor, and if Trezor hopefully will listen to this podcast as well. Absolutely, the Trezor was this. She's a force of nature. She's also a queenager. She's a fabulous Irish woman in her 50s who's just like Zumba queen, and it's just got more energy than anyone I've ever met in my life. And Trezor is a Zumba teacher, and thanks to Trezor, I was traveling and Zumbaing on a helipad in a car park next to a garden centre in Delhi.
Of course.
And everywhere in between.
Oh, Oh, nice. Yeah, she had so much energy and could get by on like 2 hours sleep. I don't know how she does it, but it's amazing. So I'll put the links to your YouTube channel in the show notes
Oh,
as well
thank
for
you.
anyone who wants to go there. I just want to quickly ask you about your move from Birmingham to Devon, because I found this fascinating, being someone who I want a base at some point to travel from, but I haven't yet found that place that's made me go, I have to live here. And I really love your story of how you moved house. So could you just tell us that story?
Yeah, of course. Well, I was living in Birmingham, which is a pretty industrial city in the heart of England. And I was looking for something else in life. And I went on a yoga and Alexander retreat in Sierra Nevada. And I was chatting to a couple there. And they were like, oh, you would love Totnes, you would. You would really love it. And I went, So I said, all right, I'll go then, because I am very action oriented. So a week after I got back, I at the time had a house in Birmingham and I had a couple of lodgers. And there was one of the lodgers, I called him Bubble. Put it like this, he was the will to my grace. And I said, look, there's this place called Totnes. And these people said, I'd really love it. Should we go for a weekend? He went, yeah, okay. So we got the train here and arrived Saturday at noon. And we were sat in a restaurant 6 o'clock the same day, 6 p.m. And I said to him, Bubble, I love this place. I've never been to somewhere that I just know that I have to be there. I've never found, and I've lived in quite a few really nice places like Cheltenham, Oxford. So I've been and I've traveled a lot. And so what we then did on the Sunday morning is that we went and viewed some properties.
2 days after.
No, it's
one day.
within 24 hours. Because
Wow.
we'd arrived at noon and so I managed to view some properties Sunday morning. We left Sunday afternoon. So by that stage, we'd been there 26 hours. And then one of the properties that I'd viewed was the Victorian Villa, the apartment in it. Going to do it. So I phoned up on the Monday morning and I put in on that apartment.
That's amazing to me. I love
Yeah.
that story so much. Have you always been that impulsive about big things like that? Or was this a complete, like, out of the blue scenario?
Well, I prefer to think of the term as decisive.
Okay. Extremely decisive.
Because the way that I looked at it, I own my house in Birmingham and my business at the time where I was employing people more in an agency type of setting. I have a more flexible business model now. Just meant because I'd got my house in Brum and I'd got lodgers there because I've always liked shared living. It's always appealed. I just thought, right, Totnes is a good investment. And actually, the villa as you saw it didn't look anything like that when I bought it. So it had been on the market 5 months. It hadn't even had a second viewing. Yellow tongue and groove ceilings. It had 3 bathrooms, which included an orange bathroom, an avocado bathroom, and a purple one. It had crazy paving fireplaces, plugs hanging off walls. It was in a right state and no one had the vision that came to see it. So I didn't come to Totnes actually thinking I was going to create a massive renovation program. But if I want that apartment, it's going to have to be that. And so I just thought, you know what, I've got the vision. I'll design the apartment. I had like walls knocked down and all different things, bathrooms rebuilt. And then I'll give it a go. And if I don't like it, I can sell it. Because I know I'll massively increase the value. So what am I actually risking?
It's a good way of looking at it. And then you just decided to move completely.
I kept my place in Birmingham for 11 and a half years or 12 years after I moved to Totnes because of my family primarily being in Birmingham. So, and I would do a mixture of different ways of either being in Birmingham Monday to Thursday, Totnes Thursday to Monday, or then doing like 1 week in Totnes, 3 weeks in Birmingham, and then changing it all around again. But it did take me a long time to find the right friends. And I really struggled to find my tribe down here, which I now have, but it was a real struggle.
And
For quite some years, actually.
How did you end up finding them? Were you joining clubs and things, or like putting yourself out there?
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, I'd always done that. I'm like, I'll just take no prisoners. I think I just struck lucky there was an entrepreneur forum event that had been organised. I struck lucky we met a couple of people. It was also in a different co-work that I'd moved to and just things like that. And then just sort of built on it from there. But there was a point, I think I'd been here 4 years at that stage, where a lot of the time I was really lonely here. And I began to think, I thought I could never bear giving up my home here, but maybe Birmingham has to be my main place. And this can't be my main place, because if I'm not going to meet the right people, it's all about people and nature and connectivity for me.
Yeah, definitely. And you've obviously done it, because when I visited, everywhere we went, you saw someone you knew and like one of your friends, and it was just a really nice, it seems like a really nice sort of tight-knit community that you had around you. So that's really
Yeah, I've got some really lovely friends here and community now, but it took a lot of effort and a lot of years
yeah.
to build that.
But yeah, it's a very nice place, and your place looks very nice now, so you did a very good job of the
Thank you.
renovation. Now, you're a self-proclaimed personal growth junkie, as am I. Do you have
Yes.
any recommendations for books or people to follow or that kind of thing?
Just before we hopped on our chat together, I was saying I'm a massive fan of a podcast series as well as your own. And the other podcast series is called Diary of a CEO, or DOAC, and that's with Stephen Bartlett. And that's phenomenal. He has like the best guests, and I have never yet, I'd listened to at least one podcast a week of his, at least, sometimes 2 or 3. And they range between 90 and 120 minutes each. Never once have I felt disappointed or walked away without huge learning. So I would really commend Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO, and got a few books actually, because I knew that you were going to ask that question, because you're very good at your prep. And so they're all a real mix, but I'll start with, I think books are some of the, audio or paper, are some of the best. Like if you think you pay, say, 10 or 12 quid, and you'll know this because obviously I've got your book.
Thank you.
You get like a life's worth of wisdom for 10 or 12 quid. Like,
I know.
what a
It's
bargain.
amazing.
So this is my number one all-time book of most influence, which is Stephen Covey's. They were known as the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, but actually he did do a revision, so there are now 8
You've
habits.
added one. I didn't know that was a revision. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Do you want me to tell you the revision, or do you want to?
You can if you want. I'll probably forget by the time I can rush to read it. So.
Well, the 8th habit is to know your purpose. But I refer to the 7 and the 8 habits now. I refer to it all of the time. It's been phenomenal in my life. So I'm a big fan of anything that Stephen Covey has produced. Also, another book, it's called Influence, and it's by, got it there, but it's a different one that I picked up. And it's by a guy called Professor Robert Cialdini. And it shows the power, it gives you the 6 pillars of how to influence people. And very successful people know how to ethically influence others.
I've not read that.
Yeah, he's a social scientist, behaviorist, American. And his follow-up book was called Persuasion. It's all the things that you do before you say what you mean to say that make the difference. That's a complete mindfuck. So, and because I'm a marketer, and because I spent 6 years studying sales psychology, and I'm doing a lot of work in psycholinguistics at the moment, which is understanding the buyer types. Everyone has a personality, and it's what type of personality you are. And then I advise companies on how to communicate in a way that matches that buyer's or that person's communication needs. So, for example, if you've got someone that is highly impulsive, so if you're doing DISC profiling, or I don't know if you've ever done any psychometric profiling. So if you've got someone that DISC, which is high I, sunshine yellow, they're really quite usually creative, spontaneous, impulsive, high energy. If you're trying to have a sales conversation with them and you're giving them a lot of detail and you're using a slow tone of voice, and if you're using lots of words like system, methodology, I advise companies at that level. But other types of books that I have been phenomenal for me. This is a book called Self Therapy. So it's based on the model of IFS, or internal family systems. and that's by Jay Earley, Jayearley. And I've actually had therapy using the internal family systems model, and it was a total game changer for me, along with the amazing therapist I used to see called Marguerite Beckett. If she's listening, she was a game changer in my life. So Self-Therapy is another book, and it's all about how we have different parts to us, like a wounded part or a protector or a manager. And it just helps you to manage and be kind and to heal those parts. So you can have an awesome life. And they do lots of like online community stuff, so that even if people haven't got a lot of money for therapy, they can still access it, which is really important. And just 2 more books. I'm not an artist, but this is a phenomenal book in so many ways. And it's called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. It's called A Course in Discovering and Recovering Your Creative Self. But it's a little bit like, the AA program, the 12 steps. Mm-hmm. So if you know what the AA program comprises, you don't have to be an addict to get loads of benefit from the AA program.
Right.
And Russell Brand does a brilliant one. And he's all into like democratization of healing, isn't he? And so his is some bonkers cheap, like 10 quid or something. And you've got a phenomenal program. And it's just all about learning who you are and managing yourself and expressing healing and thriving. So another little gem. And the final one, this was recommended by my 99-year-old uncle, Uncle Tom. Big shout out when he's listening. And Uncle Tom, not so much now, I'll have to have a word with him, but I'm giving him a break because he's 99. Used to be my bibliotherapist.
Oh, wow.
So Uncle Tom would recommend a book for me that he think I would benefit from. And this is called L'Art de la Simplicité, and it's How to Live More with Less by Dominique Leroux. And this is an absolutely beautiful book. And there's just so many lessons for life. And it was just a really stunning read in so many ways. So those are some of the inspirations. I'm a daily learner, and every day I'm learning.
Nice. I'm going to have to add all of those to my list, and the revised version
Yes.
of Stephen Covey's book as well.
What's your number one or top 3?
I could not pick a top 3, I don't think. Like, I read a lot of self-development books and things, but the books that really sort of changed the way I think about life or changed the trajectory of my life, not necessarily like mindset or self-development books. Like, I mentioned that the Netflix show that I watched. Around the same time, I read 2 books, and I think it was the culmination of those 3 things. 2 very profound books and 1 very rubbish reality show came together. And then one is called Dream Big by Bob Goff. He has a podcast as well called Dream Big, I think it's called.
Oh, I haven't heard of that. Lovely. I love.
Yeah, and he's incredible. He's an American guy, and he has just done so many incredible things in his life. And he just, like, a crazy idea in his head, and he just goes and does it. He doesn't let any sort of limiting beliefs or like anyone saying, well, that is ridiculous, that's the most ridiculous thing I've seen or heard, you can't possibly do that. He just goes and does it. I think he's ended up being like the ambassador for like an African country or something, but not the American ambassador, the African ambassador for like other countries, and just like things that just make any sense. But he goes out there and does these incredible things. The other one is A Million Miles in 1,000 Years by Donald Miller. And Donald Miller is the guy who, I don't know if you know about story brand marketing, he wrote that book, and he just writes business books now. But before that, he was a memoirist. So this is one of his memoirs. It's actually about the process of how independent film company contacted him to make a film of one of his other memoirs, which is Blue Like Jazz, which is all about sort of religion and spirituality and stuff. So he's basically trying to make a film of his life, but the filmmakers basically tell him, like, well, we need to change the script because your life's too boring. Like, we need to make it into a format that works for screen. And it gets him thinking about how boring his life actually is and how he needs to create inciting incidents like you do in a screenplay in his life, which he started doing. And that led to all these incredible adventures and things like that. And
good framework, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really funny, and it's quite touching as well. Those 2 books and that show that made me think I just need to do more with my life. Like, I need to create my own inciting incidents. And one of them was booking the trip to Spain to go to Sun and Co. So not necessarily self-development books, but they had the biggest impact on me, I'd say. So,
but lessons are everywhere, aren't they?
Yeah.
I went to a networking event this morning, I haven't been to like a face-to-face networking event for yonks. And I thought, oh, I'll go to one. And I was listening to people and they were all really friendly people. There were so many of them that it's like, get out of your own way. So I see lessons either role models of how I see people operating. When I say operating, it could be even how they're speaking to their child, or right through to just seeing how someone does something. I think I want to be the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
So there's lessons everywhere, every day. You just got to listen and watch for them because they're there.
That's it, isn't it? You need to be open to it, and you need to sort of see things in a different way. And if you apply it to your life, and the lessons, like you say, they're everywhere. So Netflix reality show, for instance.
Yeah, it's only modeling life, isn't it? So they're
Yeah,
everywhere.
definitely. Okay, so just before we sort of wrap things up, in your bio, you say that you started your first business at the age of 12. And I want to know I want to know what is it? What was it?
I decided to teach myself floristry,
Oh, wow.
which I did. So then I started offering to families and friends to start with, but then it grew. Just things like Mother's Day, funeral wreaths. I don't know how, but anyway, Valentine's Day at the time. And again, forgive me, I was 12 and it was trending at the time, dried flower arrangements. Can you believe it? So that was my first sort of like informal business. And then I went on to be an Avon rep, something like the age of 13 or 14. I loved it.
Wow.
I loved it. I had all my little samples, had all the staff training, I had all my incentives, and I absolutely loved that. And then my dad used to, when I got all my stock in, all my customers had ordered. My dad would go around with me to make sure when I was delivering it that I wasn't mugged for my moisturizer and everything like that. And it just sort of started from there. Then I started doing like a little craft type business where I was making all like really intricate lace and pressed flower pictures, but they were actually stylish. And like many things that you do get at craft shows, look like someone's I don't know, woven it from an Aztec piece of bad fabric. So I used to then go and sell those to high-end like boutiques, like interiors boutiques and stuff like that. So those were my informal starts before I started my own agency 21 years ago.
That's amazing. I didn't even know you could be an Avon rep at the age of 13. That's amazing.
I don't know how I got around it, but God damn it, I did. I don't know if it's like that now. There were different times, weren't there?
Yeah, but that's so cool. I kind of wish I had like the whole lemonade stand story of like when you were a kid, and like I didn't do any of that, I don't think. I went to a business event in London the other week, and there was this 14-year-old guy there.
Expert Empires? Because I saw it. What was it like?
It was really good. It was my first time there. I went to see Denise Duffield-Thomas. She's one of like my online mentors. She's like a money mindset mentor from Australia. So I went to see her. But yeah, I really liked it. But there were quite a few teenagers there actually. And there was one kid who was like 14. I talked about this in a solo episode recently, but it was amazing. Like I thought his mum had maybe dragged him there, but then he started asking questions of all the speakers, and then his Instagram popped up on my phone, and he'd like recorded videos of him interviewing the speakers. And like his bio said, budding entrepreneur, future millionaire. And I was like, it's amazing. I wish I'd been like this as a kid, because that guy is going to go far. Like, yeah. And you started early as well. So that's really cool. I really like that. Okay, so 2 last quick questions, and I'll put them in the show notes, but can you let people know where they can find you online? And finally, is there anything else you want to talk about or mention before we go?
I think it's a case of that we have this one wild and precious life, and we need to treat it with that respect, to just go for it. Because when I said to a couple of people, I think I'm doing a digital nomad thing, and I had 2 or 3 people say to me, oh, but you're a woman in her 50s and there are going to be loads of really young people. They're not going to want to talk to you, are they? I said, can I swear on this podcast?
Go ahead.
I was just like, fuck that. I'm not allowing your projection or your self-limiting beliefs to stop me. And it's always been my experience that if you are interested and interesting and you wear a smile, that's what's important. And just go for it. Don't let anyone Got a card. One of my ethos that I live by is be a warrior, not a worrier. And I just think go for it. If you're having like doubts, or just take the steps. The only way you get confidence is to do the thing of which you're afraid.
Mm-hmm. Definitely agree.
Those are my parting words.
Oh, thank you. And can we find you online I know you're on LinkedIn because you do a lot of business to business stuff.
Yeah. So LinkedIn is actually a really good place to find me, and it's put in the Sarah Hughes. And then I think I've given you a Linktree links that's got, I'm not massively active on other social media, but I've got the YouTube channel that's got all of the Digital Nomad diaries on, the video diary series. And then I will be adding more videos. So yeah, those are the main places, probably the YouTube and LinkedIn. Nice. Where I can be found.
Okay, and we'll put those in the show notes as well as the link to the Linktree as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was nice to catch up anyway.
It's just gone. I mean, hang on, I'm just checking in. Oh, that's gone so fast, hasn't it?
I know, yeah. I have more questions, but I'm like, we just keep talking. So maybe we'll need to do another one in the future. But yes, thank you for coming on. It was very nice to see you. And hopefully it won't be too long before I see you again.
Yeah, IRL.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. We're going to do a Zoom with Deanna and Sunny at some point, I think, the Devon crew. But yeah, yes. If we can meet IRL, that would be amazing too. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Travel Transformation Podcast with me, Jessica Grace Coleman. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review, and spread the word if you have friends or family who also want to transform through travel. For a chance of winning one of my books in ebook form, please review this podcast on Apple Podcasts and send a screenshot or just your name to info@traveltransformationcoach.com or at traveltransformationcoach on Instagram. I'll be picking a new winner each month, and you can choose between any of my non-fiction titles, including Write Your Life, Write Your Year, and Intentional Travel Transformation. You can find out more about me at traveltransformationcoach.com, where you can also get your free travel transformation guide. And until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye.